Logan is the third and final solo Wolverine movie, and it is definitely the send-off that he deserved.
We got ourselves an X-Men fan. Maybe a quarter of it happened, and not like this. In the real world, people die.
So this movie owes a lot to Deadpool, not in tone, but in showing the executives that, hey, this kind of movie can work. That people will go see an R-rated movie in droves, and we finally get the Logan action that we've always wanted. Like, when you have someone with foot-long claws that are the sharpest and hardest metal possible, there's going to be some serious damage when he gets into using them. Right out of the gate, they really show that brutality in an excellent way, and it's really a great beginning that I won't spoil. And then also, when the actual movie starts, there's some great action scenes right from the beginning. And really, throughout the movie, the action is high-paced and frantic, but you can still see what's going on. And now, some of the stuff, there's obviously some CGI, but it's very well done. It's not too noticeable. Definitely not like the Wolverine Origins. But, I really didn't mind it all when they did notice it, which wasn't often. And there's a little bit of shake to the camera to hide a few things, but really not that much. So Logan was directed by James Mangold, and it obviously stars Hugh Jackman as Logan. It also stars Patrick Stewart as a dangerous but old and fragile Charles Xavier. It's a great question, what happens if a person with the strongest and most powerful mind in the world, what happens if he loses it? What damage can he do? And this film also introduces the excellent Daphne Keane as Laura, or X-23. And she reminds me a little bit of Eleven from Stranger Things, but she really does everything that she could be expected to do. Now, one of the easier ways to do that is that she's kind of mute. But she looks the part. And I loved her character and their interaction with Logan and Professor Xavier. So the basic idea of this story is that it's based on the comic Old Man Logan. But in Old Man Logan, it uses a lot of the other Marvel characters, especially Hawkeye and incestuous cannibal Hulks, and a lot of other characters like that. So they could never do a movie version of Old Man Logan. But this is the thing as close as you can get. And it's not just a good action film. It's also an excellent drama. Between the action scenes, it's not just dumb action all the way through. They have really tender and heartfelt moments that I loved. So it is set in 2029, and it's in the future, so there's not enough things that make it crazy. It's not like Days of Future Past times. But one of the coolest things, and this is definitely probably in our future in the next decade or two, is that it has autonomous trucks. But it's really interesting how they designed them. They kind of look like giant shipping crates on wheels. And it's really kind of cool. And that's something that's probably most likely to happen in a futuristic film. And I really like that. Although they didn't do too much other things with trying to be futuristic. But something happened where almost all of the mutants are dead and no more are being born. And they really never go into it at all, really. They explain a little bit about what may have happened, but why there aren't any more new mutants, but they never explain what happened to the X-Men. And that brings me to one problem with any film that is in the X-Men cinematic universe. The timelines are so messed up that it's just kind of insane to try to rationalize when it's taking place. Like, the easiest way to say that Logan is set in its own universe. But at the same time, there's obviously a lot of signs that it's not just a separate universe. But it's definitely not with Apocalypse and Days of Future Past. Like, the happy ending of Days of Future Past, I don't see how that this could lead to Logan. To me, it would make much more sense if, when you have all that timey-wimey stuff, when you go back in time, like, maybe there are multiple different universes that kind of split from that. And this reminded me of what the future may have been like after X-Men 3: The Last Stand. And you could put in the Wolverine, the second Wolverine film, because especially at one point he looks at a samurai sword hanging in his room, but then he doesn't have bone claws, and he loses his adamantium at the end of that movie. So I don't see how he'd get it back. So I really think that this is the future after the demolition of the X-Men 3: Last Stand, which is a pretty bad movie. I mean, it has its good parts, but I mean, it kind of makes sense because at the end of that movie, a lot of the mutants are dead. And you also have the whole thing where they were curing the mutant gene. So it makes sense that not many mutants would be around. And there's also things that seem that it wouldn't be from the Apocalypse universe, and after Days of Future Past, because Professor Xavier one time says, like, from the first time I met you, when you were fighting in a cage like an animal. And that would be from the first X-Men. And same way they mention the Statue of Liberty. And that's kind of, the battle they had in the first X-Men. So it's obviously the Logan and Wolverine from the original X-Men trilogy, to me. But it's really tough to explain this. Even if you look at it like that, there's still some things that might not completely work. But that's really beside the point. You can just kind of ignore all of the other shenanigans and just say that this is an excellent film. It has an excellent road trip feel to it. That just makes it a movie that I think I'll really enjoy watching it multiple times. And I made a trip by myself to see it in IMAX a couple hours away. So I'll probably see it with some other people this weekend again. And I really want to, but that's how good it was. So as for the villains of the film, they're mainly this genetics company that's coming after X-23. And there's also this other, like, boss battle villain, which to mention would be a spoiler, so I won't, but I might talk a little bit about the end. But basically, if you don't know who X-23 is, like, this is a slight spoiler to the story, but it's really more about her comic book origins. So X-23 was a character introduced, well, originally in the cartoon, the X-Men Evolutions, but also it had a lot of comic books too, where basically, they were looking for a younger generation of X-Men. And Wolverine is kind of the grizzled, older X-Men that's been around for hundreds of years and doesn't remember his past. And they wanted something a little different, for, that maybe the newer generation of comic book readers it would appeal to. So there's this genetics company. They acquire his DNA, and they want to try to make clones of him for his mutant powers, mainly the healing, but also all the reflexes and the scent and everything. All the Wolverine goodness. But as part of that, the Y chromosome is damaged. There's also some other stuff where, like, there's some different versions where that when they clone them, the clones either aren't viable or they don't have the healing powers and the mutant powers. So they finally decide to just make it a female clone. And they actually use it with one of the women that's running the cloning program, and kind of she's the surrogate mother of X-23, or Laura Kinney. She's kind of like a lioness, where she has two claws in her hand and one claw on their toe. And it's kind of like, how the lioness, when they're hunting, use the back claws and more than, a lion would. In the comics, she's very much like a hunter. Like, they train her to become an assassin, and they have this special scent that when it's given to her, she kind of goes berserk and goes on a killing spree. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on with her, but eventually she goes and joins the Academy for Mutants, and Logan kind of becomes her father, not just the clone dad. It's really a father figure, to her. And in the comics, I think in 2015, they killed off Wolverine. Like, Wolverine died, and she actually took over for him as the Wolverine, and the comic series is really good. I really enjoy it. The other thing that's different between X-23 and Wolverine is that, because she's giving the adamantium claws when she's young, like, obviously while she's growing, it wouldn't really be, it wouldn't work, because the growth plates her bones would be shifting, and the adamantium wouldn't let it, so she'd always be a midget or something like that. So instead, they just coat her claws, her toe and her two claws in her hands, and that's like she's not quite as impenetrable as Wolverine. For what I didn't like about the movie, there really isn't that much. I mean, the movie is a little bit long, and it slows down in a couple of parts, but I actually really enjoyed that. It kind of lets you just breathe in the atmosphere, and that, let the characters grow and, interact with each other, and I really enjoyed those moments. But I would say, like, I won't talk now, I may talk a little bit at the end, but I wasn't a huge fan of some of the stuff that happens. But overall, it's just a great movie and an excellent send-off for Wolverine. It's finally the movie that he deserves. And it's amazing that he was able to make it. And I really hope that it pays off and the movie does really well. So I'd give it a 9 out of 10, and I would highly recommend it. Now, as for some spoilers, I won't talk too much about, like, a lot of the spoilers, but the one thing I want to mention is that, and this again, if spoiling the movie, like, you probably want to hear about this if you don't know, because it's not in any of the trailers. They did a good job avoiding this. But again, if turn the video off if you don't want to see the spoilers. But here we go, spoiler talk. So the big turning point of the movie, and it kind of wrecks everything that had been good that's going on, is that there's an X-24. And this X-24 is an adult clone of Wolverine. And it gave me a lot of problems. Like, the fights between the two Wolverines were cool, but, and they didn't overuse it too much. The fights were relatively quick and brutal. But I don't think I needed that. And I kind of wish that instead of him murdering the family and Xavier, that they would have just left. Like, Xavier could have died some other way, but I really didn't like the clone aspect of it. It also really goes against the whole origins of X-23, because you couldn't do a male clone of Wolverine. That's the whole idea for the female clones. And actually, like, in the new series, there's a thing where they were making more clones of X-23, and now there's a whole little thing where she has to raise her own daughter, kind of like Wolverine did. And it's kind of touching some really cool stuff with that. But again, they were all female. There cannot be a male clone. And this, I know they're not, the origin story is different. And the whole fighting an evil version of yourself has been done thousands of times. Like, it's a cliche. And I think that's probably the weakest part of the movie. But, other than that, it's excellent. And I love the whole idea that, like in this one, X-23 isn't really that they were 22 previous clones of Wolverine that failed. They're really 22 other mutant clones where they're trying to make weapons out of the mutant genes now that they're mostly extinct. But they want to try to weaponize them. And they also don't really explain how there is an adult version of Logan. Because he can't just, like a clone starts out as a baby. Unless they're doing something else. Like, how is he an adult already? Like, unless he's accelerated aging, but I don't see how. They never explain it. They never even try to explain it. I do like that there's no post-credit scene with Wolverine breaking through the rocks and that, oh, he's actually alive. But at the same time, I would have liked that. Like, but this is kind of a separate universe, so he could still be alive, and it wouldn't really matter. Like, he wouldn't have to reprise his role. But I guess they felt they needed to kill him off. But how he was killed, he should be able to heal, just maybe really slowly. Like, I know his healing process is delayed. But, also, I don't see how, like, it looks like the tree stump kind of goes through his chest. Like, it could have been below the rib cage, but I'm pretty sure it was around the rib cage. And a tree stump wouldn't be able to go through adamantium. So I don't see how the tree stump went through his chest. But, I would have loved more that all of the little mutant kids, if he could have been the new professor and he could have created a new school for mutants up in Canada. But, I understand why they didn't want to go in that direction. They want to give him a proper send-off and not do like a Superman thing from Batman Superman where the casket shakes and like, oh, he's still alive. It just kind of ruins the whole point of the movie. But someone want a happy ending, but it doesn't always happen, and it shouldn't always happen. So that's my review, and there's some other stuff I could talk about for spoilers, but I think that's enough. So thanks for watching, and you can check out my other playlists or subscribe to me around my head. There are the buttons for that, and thanks for watching.